But this argument is not accepted by the great authorities. Lord Chaitanya also condemned this idea while he was talking with Raman Rai on the gradual development of devotional service. He rejected the idea of importance of Varnashram Dharma when it was put forward by Raman Rai. He said that this advancement of Varna and ashram is merely external. There is a higher principle. In Bhagavad Gita also, the Lord says that one has to give up all other principles of elevation and take simply to the method of Krishna consciousness. That will help one in achieving the highest perfection of life. In the 11th canto, 12th chapter, verse 9 of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord Himself says, one should execute the prescribed duties of Varna and Ashrama as long as he has not developed spontaneous attachment for hearing about my pastimes and activities. In other words, the prescribed forms of Varna and Ashrama are ritualistic ceremonies of religion intended for economic development, sense gratification, or salvation. All of these things are recommended for persons who have not developed Krishna consciousness. In fact, all such activities are recommended in the revealed scriptures only to bring one to the point of Krishna consciousness. But one who has already developed spontaneous attachment for Krishna does not require to execute the duties prescribed in the scriptures. Chapter 14. Devotional qualifications. Some scholars recommend that knowledge and renunciation are important factors for elevating one's devotional service. But actually, this is not a fact. Actually, the cultivation of knowledge or renunciation, which are favorable for achieving a footing in Krishna consciousness, may be accepted in the beginning, but ultimately they may also come to be rejected. For devotional service is dependent on nothing other than the sentiment or desire for such service. It requires nothing more than sincerity. It is the opinion of expert devotees that mental speculation and artificial austerities of yoga practice may be favorable for becoming liberated from material contamination, but they will also make one's heart harder and harder. They will not help at all in the progress of devotional service. These processes are therefore not favorable for entering into the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Actually, Krishna consciousness, devotional service itself is the only way of advancing in devotional life. Devotional service is absolute. It is both the cause and the effect. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause and effect of all that be. And to approach Him, the absolute, the process of devotional service, which is also absolute, has to be adopted. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita by the Lord Himself. One can understand me only through devotional service. In beginning His teaching of the Gita, the Lord said to Arjuna, because you are my devotee, I shall teach these secrets to you. Vedic knowledge means ultimately to understand the Supreme Lord, and the process of entering into His kingdom is devotional service. That is accepted by all authentic scriptures. Mental speculator neglect the process of devotional service, and by simply trying to defeat others in philosophical research, they fail to develop the ecstasy of devotion. In the 11th canto, 12th chapter, verse 31 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna says, my dear Uddhava, for persons who are seriously engaged in my service, the cultivation of philosophical speculation and artificial renunciation are not very favorable. When a person becomes my devotee, he automatically attains the fruits of the renunciation of material enjoyment, and he gets sufficient knowledge to understand the absolute truth. That is the test of advancement in devotional service. A devotee cannot be in darkness because the Lord shows him special favor and enlightens him from within. In the 11th canto, 20th chapter, verse 32 and 33 of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord further instructs Uddhava. My dear friend, the prophets derived from the fruitive activities, austerity, the culture of philosophical knowledge, renunciation, the practice of mystic yoga, charity, and all similar auspicious activities are automatically achieved by my devotees. Those who are simply attached to me by loving service. These devotees have everything at their disposal, but they desire nothing outside of my devotional service. If ever a devotee should desire some material profit, like promotion to the heavenly planets or some spiritual profit, to go to the Vaikuntahs by my causeless mercy, his desires are very easily fulfilled. Actually, a person who is developing Krishna consciousness and still has some attachment to material enjoyment will soon be freed from such a tendency by regularly discharging devotional service under the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master. Srila Rupa Goswami then recommends that one should not be attached to material sense enjoyment but should accept everything enjoyable which is in relationship to Krishna. For example, eating is necessary and one wants some palatable dishes to satisfy his sense of taste. So, in that case, for the satisfaction of Krishna rather than for the satisfaction of the tongue, some palatable dishes may be prepared and offered to Krishna. That it is then it is renunciation. Let the palatable dishes be prepared, but unless they are offered to Krishna, one should not accept them for eating. This vow of rejecting anything which is not offered to Krishna is actually renunciation. And by such renunciation, one is able to satisfy the demands of the senses. The impersonalists who try to avoid everything material may undergo severe austerities, but they miss the opportunity of being engaged in service of the Lord. Thus, their renunciation is not sufficient for perfection. There are many instances where, following such artificial renunciation without any contact with devotion, the impersonalist again fell down and became attracted to material contamination. There are there are many supposed renouncers even of the present movement who officially became. There are many supposed renouncers even at the present moment who officially become sannyasis or renouncers and outwardly claim that spiritual existence is truth and the material existence untruth. In this way, artificially they make a show of renunciation of the material world. However, because they cannot reach the point of devotional service, they fail to achieve their goal. And they again come back to material activities such as philanthropic work and political agitation. There are many examples of so-called sannyasis who gave up the world as untruth but again came to the material world because they were not seeking their real repose at the lotus feet of the Lord. One should not give up anything which can be utilized in the service of the Lord. That is the secret of devotional service. Anything that can be utilized in this advancing Krishna consciousness in devotional service should be accepted. For instance, we are using many machines for the advancement of our present Krishna consciousness movement. Machines like typewriters, dictating machines, tape recorders, microphones and airplanes. Sometimes people ask us, why are you utilizing material products if you condemn the advancement of material civilization? But actually we do not condemn. We simply ask people to do whatever they are doing in Krishna consciousness. This is the same principle on which in Bhagavad Gita Krishna advised Arjuna to utilize his fighting abilities in devotional service. Similarly, we are utilizing these machines for Krishna's service. With such sentiment for Krishna or Krishna consciousness, we can accept everything. If the typewriter can be utilized for advancing our Krishna consciousness movement, we must accept it. Similarly, the dictating machine or any other machine must be used Our vision is that Krishna is everything. Krishna is the cause and effect, and nothing belongs to us. Krishna's things must be used in the service of Krishna. That is our vision. This does not mean, however, that we should give up the principles of discharging devotional service or neglect abiding by the rules and regulations prescribed therein. In the neophyte stage of devotion, one must follow all principles regulated by authority of the spiritual master. The acceptance and rejection of things should always be in pursuance of the devotional principles, not that one can independently manufacture some idea of what should be accepted or rejected. The spiritual master as the visible manifestations of Krishna is necessary. Therefore, to direct the devotee on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master must never be carried away by an accumulation of wealth or a large number of followers. A bona fide spiritual master will never become like that. But sometimes if a spiritual master is not properly authorized and only on his own initiative becomes a spiritual master, he may be carried away by an accumulation of wealth and large number of disciples. His is not a very high grade of devotional service. If a person is carried away by such achievement, then his devotional service becomes slackened. One should therefore strictly adhere to the principle of disciplic succession. A Krishna conscious person, being naturally purified, has no need of developing any other purific process of thought or action. On account of his being highly elevated in Krishna consciousness, he has already acquired all the good qualities and is following the rules and regulations prescribed of the mystic yoga process. Such rules are automatically practiced by devotees. A concrete example is the quality of non-violence, which is considered a good qualification. A devotee is naturally non-violent and therefore doesn't have to practice non-violence separately. Some people seek purification by joining a vegetarian movement, but a devotee is automatically a vegetarian. He does not need to practice separately in this matter or join any society of vegetarians. He is automatically a vegetarian. There are many other instances showing that a devotee doesn't practice anything but Krishna consciousness. All the good qualities of demigod automatically develop within him. Those who are intentionally practicing to be vegetarian or to become non-violent may have good qualification by material estimation. But these qualifications are not sufficient to make them devotees. A vegetarian is not necessarily a devotee, nor is a non-violent person. But a devotee is automatically both vegetarian and non-violent. He must conclude, therefore, that vegetarianism or non-violence is not the cause of devotion. In this connection, there is a story in the Skanda Purana about a hunter who has converted into a great devotee under the instruction of Narad Muni. When the hunter became a perfect devotee, he was not prepared to kill even an ant. Parvat Muni, a friend of Narada, saw the wonderful transformation of the hunter by devotional service and remarked, "My dear hunter, your unwillingness to kill even an ant is not very astonishing. Any person who develops devotional attitude has all the good qualities automatically manifested in his person. A devotee is never the cause of distress to anyone." Sri Rupa Goswami often says that purification of consciousness, purification of bodily activities, austerity, peace of mind, etc., all become automatically manifest in the person who is engaged in devotional service. Sri Rupa Goswami affirms herein that there are 9 different kinds of devotional service which are listed as hearing, chanting, reviewing, serving, worshipping the deity in the temple, praying, carrying out orders, serving Krishna as a friend, and sacrificing everything for him. Each and every one of these processes is so powerful that if anyone follows even one single of them, he can achieve the desired perfection without fail. For example, if one is attached simply to hearing about the Lord, and another is attached to chanting the glories of the name, both will achieve the desired goal in devotional service. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this has been explained. One may execute one, two, three, or all different processes of devotional service, and at the ultimate end, he will achieve the desired goal of being established in devotional service. There are concrete examples of how a devotee discharged one of these services and achieved perfection. King Parishit achieved the desired goal of life simply by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Sukadeva Goswami achieved the desired goal of life simply by reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Prahlad Maharaj became successful in his devotional service by always remembering the Lord. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, was successful by engaging herself in massaging the lotus feet of the Lord. King Prithu became successful by worshipping in the temple. Akrur became successful by offering prayers. Hanuman became successful by rendering devotional service to Lord Ramakrishna. Arjun became successful by being a friend of Krishna. And Bali Maharaj became successful simply by offering all of his possessions to Krishna. There are also examples of devotees who discharge all the different items together. In the ninth canto, 4th chapter, verse 18, 19, and 20 of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a statement about Maharaj Ambarish, who followed every one of the devotional processes. In these verses, Sukadeva Goswami says, King Ambarish, first of all, concentrated his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and then engaged his speech in describing the pastimes and activities of the Lord. He engaged his hands in washing the temple of the Lord. He engaged his ears in hearing of the transcendental glories of the Lord. He engaged his eyes in seeing the beauty in the temple. He engaged his body in associating with the pure devotees of the Lord. When you associate with someone, you have to sit down together, eat together, etc. And in this way, the touch of your body with his body is inevitable. Amrish Maharaj made his association only with pure devotees and did not allow his body to be touched by anyone else. He engaged his nostril in smelling the flowers or tulsi offered to Krishna. And he engaged his tongue in tasting Krishna Prasada, food prepared specifically for offering to the Lord, the remnants of which are taken by the devotees. Maharaj Amrish was able to offer very nice prasad to Krishna. Maharaj Amrish was able to offer very nice prasad to the Lord. Maharaj Amrish, because he was a king and had no scarcity of finances, he used to offer Krishna the most royal dishes and would then taste the remnants as Krishna Prasad. There was no scarcity in his royal style because he had a very beautiful temple wherein the deity of the Lord was decorated with costly paraphernalia and offered high grade food. So everything was available and his engagement was always completely in Krishna consciousness. The idea that we should we should follow in the footsteps of great devotees. If we are unable to execute all the different items of devotional service, we must try to execute at least one of them, as exemplified by previous acharyas. If we are engaged in the execution of all the items of devotional service, as was Maharaj Amrisha, then the perfection of devotional service is guaranteed from each one of these items. With the first complete engagement, one becomes automatically detached from material contamination and liberation becomes the maid servant of the devotee. This idea is confirmed by Bilva Mangal Thakur. If one develops unalloyed devotion to the Lord, liberation will follow the devotee as his maid servant. Srila Rupa Goswami says that the regulative principle of devotional service are sometimes described by authorities as the path of serving the Lord in opulence. Chapter 15. Spontaneous devotional service. Examples of spontaneous devotional service can be easily seen in Krishna's direct associates in Vrindavan. The spontaneous dealings of the residents of Vrindavan in relationship with Krishna are called Raganuga. These beings don't have to learn anything about devotional service. They are already perfect in all regulative principles and have achieved the spontaneous loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For example, the cowherd boys who are playing with Krishna do not have to learn by austerities or penances or yoga practice how to play with him. They have passed all tests of regulative principles in their previous life, and as a result, they are now elevated to the position of direct association with Krishna as his dear friends. This spontaneous attitude is called Raganuga Bhakti. Guru Goswami has defined Raganuga Bhakti as spontaneous attraction. दो दो पैराग्राफ पीछे पढ़िए ये चैप्टर पीछे जो 15 Chapter 15 Spontaneous Devotional Service. Examples of spontaneous devotional service can be easily seen in Krishna's direct associates in Vrindavan. The spontaneous dealings of residents of Vrindavan in relationship with Krishna are called Raganuga. These beings don't have to learn anything about devotional service. They are already perfect in all regulative principles and have achieved the spontaneous loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For example, the cowherd boys who are playing with Krishna do not have to learn by austerities or penances or yoga practice how to play with him. They have passed all tests of regulative principles in their previous life, and as a result, they are now elevated to the position of direct association with Krishna as his dear friends. This spontaneous attitude is called Raganuga Bhakti. Shri Goswami has defined Raganuga Bhakti as spontaneous attraction for something while completely absorbing thoughts in it, with an intense desire of love. Devotional service executed with such feelings of spontaneous love is called Raganuga Bhakti. Devotional service under the heading of Raganuga can be further divided into two categories. One category is called sensual attraction and the other is called relationship. In this connection, there is a statement by Narad Muni to Yudhishthira in the 7th canto, 1st chapter, verse 30 of Srimad Bhagavatam. There, Narad says, "My dear king, there are many devotees who first become attracted to the personality of Godhead for purposes of sense gratification, from being envious of him, out of fear of him, or from desiring to sit affectionately with him. Ultimately, these attractions become freed from all material contamination, and gradually the worshipper develops spiritual love and achieves that ultimate goal of life desired by the pure devotee. The gopis may be considered to be the example of spontaneous love in sensual attraction. The gopis are young girls and Krishna is a young boy. Superficially it seems that the gopis are attracted to Krishna on the grounds of sex. Similarly, King Kamsa was attracted to Krishna because of fear. Kamsa was always fearful of Krishna because it had been foretold that his sister's son Krishna would kill him. Shishupal was also always envious of Krishna. And the descendants of King Yadu, due to their family relationship with Krishna, were always thinking of him as one of their members. All of these different kinds of devotees have a spontaneous attraction for Krishna in different categories and they achieve the same desired goal of life. The attraction of the gopis for Krishna and the affection of the members of the Yadu dynasty are both accepted as spontaneous or Raganuga. The attraction of Kamsa to Krishna in fear and the attraction of Shishupal in envy are not accepted as devotional service. However, because their attitudes are not favorable. Devotional service should be executed only in a favorable frame of mind. Therefore, according to Srila Rup Goswami, such attractions are not considered to be in devotional service. Again, he analyzes the affection of the Yadus. If it is on the platform of friendship, then it is spontaneous love. But if it is on the platform of regulative principle, then it is not. And only when affection comes to the platform of spontaneous love is it counted in the category of pure devotional service. There may be some difficulty in understanding that both the gopis and Kamsa achieve the same goal. So this point should be clearly understood because the attitudes of Kamsa and Shishupal were different from that of the gopis. Although in all these cases the focus is on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and all of the devotees are elevated to the spiritual world. There is still a distinction between these two classes of souls. In the first canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that the absolute truth is one and that he is manifested as impersonal Brahman, Paramatma, Super Soul, and Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here is a spiritual distinction. Although Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are the same and one absolute truth, devotees like Kamsa Shishupal could attain only to the Brahman effulgence. They could not have realization of Paramatma or Bhagavan. That is the distinction. An analogy can be given with the sun globe and the sunshine. To remain in the sunshine does not mean one has gone to the sun globe. The temperature of the sun globe is different from the temperature of the sunshine. One who has gone through the sunshine in jet planes or in spaceships has not necessarily gone to the sun globe. Although the sunshine and the sun globe are actually one and the same, still there is a distinction. For one is the energy and the one is the energetic source. The absolute truth and his bodily effulgence are in the same way simultaneously one and different. Kamsa and Shishupal attained to the absolute truth, but they were not allowed to enter into the Goloka Vrindavan abode. Impersonalists and the enemies of the Lord are, because of attraction to God, allowed to enter into his kingdom, but they are not allowed to enter into the Vaikuntha planets or Golok Vrindavan planet of the Supreme Lord. To enter the kingdom and to enter the king's palace are not the same thing. Srila Rupa Goswami is trying here to describe the different achievements of the impersonalists and the personalists. Generally, those who are impersonalists and are inimical to the Supreme Personality of Godhead get entrance only into the impersonal Brahman when and if they reach spiritual perfection. The impersonalist philosophers are in one sense like the enemies of the Lord, because the out and out enemies of the Lord and the impersonalists are both allowed to enter only into the impersonal effulgence of the Brahma. So it is to be understood that they are of similar classification. And actually, the impersonalists are enemies of God because they cannot tolerate the unparalleled opulence of the Lord. They try always to place themselves on the same level with the Lord. That is due to their envious attitude. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has proclaimed the impersonalists to be offenders of the Lord. The Lord is so kind, however, that even though they are his enemies, they are still allowed to enter into the spiritual kingdom and remain in the impersonal Brahmajyoti, the undifferentiated light of the Absolute. Sometimes an impersonalist may gradually elevate himself to personal conception of the Lord. Bhagavad Gita confirms this. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me. By such surrender, an impersonalist can be elevated to the Vaikuntha Loka spiritual planet, where, as a surrendered soul, he attains bodily features like those of the Lord. In the Brahmanda Purana, it is stated, those who have achieved liberation from material contamination and those who are demons and are killed by the Supreme Personality Godhead become absorbed in the Brahman concept of life and reside in the spiritual sky of the Brahmajyoti. That spiritual sky is far beyond the material sky.
टाइम
Time
टाइम कितना हो
6:02.
छः गए रीडिंग
That spiritual sky is far beyond the material sky, and it is confirmed also in Bhagavad Gita that beyond this material sky there is another eternal sky. The enemies and the impersonalists may be allowed to enter into this Brahman effulgence, but devotees of Krishna are promoted all the way to spiritual planets. Because the pure devotees have developed their spontaneous love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are allowed to enter into spiritual planets to enjoy spiritual bliss in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the 10th canto, 87th chapter, verse 23 of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vedas personified address the Lord in this way. My dear Lord, yogis meditate upon your localized feature and thus they achieve the spiritual perfection of being merged in the impersonal Brahmajyoti. Persons who treat you as an enemy achieve the same perfection without meditating. The gopis who are embraced by your serpentine hands and who have such lusty attitudes also achieve the same perfection. And as far as we are concerned, being different demigods in charge of different parts of Vedic knowledge, we are always following in the footsteps of the gopis. Thus we hope to attain the same perfection. But the same perfection, we must always remember the example of the sun and sunshine. Those who are impersonalists can merge into the sunshine like Brahmajyoti, whereas those who are in love with the Supreme Person enter into the supreme abode of the Lord, Golok Vrindavan. The lusty attitude of gopis does not refer to any sort of sex indulgence. Srila Rup Goswami explains that this lusty desire refers to the devotee's particular attitude of association with Krishna. Every devotee in his perfectional stage has a spontaneous attraction to the Lord. This attraction is sometimes called lusty desire of the devotee. The lust is the devotee's excessive desire to serve the Lord in a particular capacity. Such a desire may seem to be a desire for enjoying the Lord, but actually the endeavor is to serve the Lord in that capacity. For example, a devotee may be desiring to associate with the personality of God as his cowherd friend. He will want to serve the Lord by assisting him in controlling the cows in the pasturing ground. This may appear to be a desire to enjoy the company of the Lord, but actually it is spontaneous love, serving him by assisting in managing the transcendental cows. Sensual attraction. This extreme desire to serve the Lord is manifest in the transcendental land of Vraja, and it is specifically manifested among the gopis. The gopis' love for Krishna is so elevated that for our understanding it is sometimes explained as being lusty desire. The author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Das, Kaviraj Krishna Das, has explained this distinction between lusty desire and service attitude in this statement. Lusty desire refers to the desire to gratify one's personal senses, and transcendent desire refers to the desire for serving the senses of the Lord. In this material world, there is no such a thing as a lover wanting to please the senses of his beloved. Actually, in the material world, everyone wants to mainly gratify his own personal senses. The gopis, however, wanted nothing at all but to gratify the senses of the Lord. And there is no instance of this in the material world. Therefore, the gopis' ecstatic love for Krishna is sometimes described by scholars as being like the lusty desire of the material world. But actually, this should not be taken as a literal fact. It is simply a way of trying to understand the transcendental situation. Great devotees up to the standard of Uddhava are very dear to friends of the Lord and they desire to follow in the footsteps of the gopis. So the gopis' love for Krishna is certainly not material desire. Otherwise, how could Uddhava aspire to follow in their footsteps? Another instance is Lord Chaitanya himself. After accepting the sannyas order of life, he was very strict about avoiding association with women. But still, he taught that there is no better method of worshipping Krishna than that conceived by the gopis. Thus, the gopis' method of worshipping the Lord as if impelled by lusty desire was praised very highly even by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This very fact means that although the attraction of the gopis for Krishna appears to be lusty, it is not in the least bit material. Unless one is fully situated in the transcendental position, the relationship of the gopis with Krishna is very difficult to understand. But because it appears to be just like ordinary dealings of young boys and girls, it is sometimes misinterpreted to be like the ordinary sex of this material world. Unfortunately, persons who cannot understand the transcendental nature of the love affairs of the gopis and Krishna take it for granted that Krishna's love affairs with gopis are mundane transactions and therefore they sometimes indulge in painting licentious pictures in some modernistic style. On the other hand, the lusty desire of Kubja is described by learned scholars as being almost lusty desire. Kubja was a hunchbacked woman who also wanted Krishna with a great ecstatic love. But her desire for Krishna was almost mundane. And so her love cannot be compared to the love of gopis. Her loving affection for Krishna is called Kam Praya or almost like the gopis' love for Krishna. Chapter 16. Spontaneous devotion further described. Relationship. In the attitude of the descendants of Vrindavan, such as Nand Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, is to be found the ideal transcendental concept of the father and mother of Krishna, the original personality of Godhead. Actually, no one can become the father or mother of Krishna, but a devotee's possession of such transcendental feeling is called love of Krishna in parental affection, in parental relationship. The Vrishnis, Krishna's relative at Dwarka, also felt like that. So spontaneous love of Krishna in the parental relationship is found both among those denizens of Dwarka who belong to the dynasty of Vrishni and among the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Spontaneous love of Krishna as exhibited by Vrishnis and the descendants of Vrindavan is eternally existing in them. In the stage of devotional service where regulative principles are followed, there is no necessity of discussing this love, for it must develop for itself at a more advanced stage. Eligibility for spontaneous devotional service. Persons desiring to follow in the footsteps of such eternal devotees of the Lord as the Vrishnis and Vrindavan denizens are called Raganuga Bhaktas, which means that they are trying to attain to the perfection of those devotees. These Raganuga devotees do not follow the regulative principles of devotional service very strictly, but by spontaneous nature they become attracted to some of the external devotees such as Nanda or Yashoda and they try to follow in their footsteps spontaneously. There is a gradual development of the ambition to become like a particular devotee and this activity is called Raganuga. We must always remember, however, that such eagerness to follow in the footsteps of the denizens of Braja is not possible unless one is freed from material contamination. In the following, in following the regulative principles of devotional service, there is a stage called Anath Nivriti, which means the disappearance of all material contamination. Sometimes someone is found imitating such devotional love, but factually he is not freed from anarthas or unwanted habits. It has been seen that a so-called devotee proclaims himself a follower of Nanda, Yashoda or Gopis, while at the same time his abominable attraction for mundane sex life is visible. Such a manifestation of divine love is mere imitation and has no value. When one is actually spontaneously attracted to the loving principle of the gopis, there will be found no trace of any mundane contamination in his character. Therefore, in the beginning, everyone should strictly follow the regulative principle of devotional service according to the injunctions of the scriptures and the spiritual master. Only after the stage of liberation from material contamination can one actually aspire to follow in the footsteps of the devotees in Vrindavan. It is said by Rup Goswami, when one is actually liberated from material contamination, he can always remember an eternal devotee in Vrindavan in order to love Krishna in the same capacity. In developing such an aptitude, one will always live in Vrindavan even within his mind. The purport is that if it is possible, one should go and physically be present at Vraj Bhumi, Vrindavan, and be engaged always in the service of the Lord, following the devotees in Vraj Dham, the spiritual realm of Vraj. If it is not possible, however, to be physically present at Vrindavan, one can meditate anywhere upon living in that situation. Wherever he may be, one must always think about life in Vraj Dham and about following in the footsteps of a particular devotee in the service of the Lord. A devotee who is actually advanced in Krishna consciousness, who is constantly engaged in devotional service, should not manifest himself even though he has attained perfection. The idea is that he should always continue to act as a neophyte devotee as long as his material body is there. Activity in devotional service under regulative principle must be followed even by the pure devotee. But when he realizes his actual position in relationship with Krishna, he can, along with the discharging of regulative services, think within himself of the Lord under the guidance of a particular associate of the Lord and develop his transcendental sentiment in following that associate. In this connection, we should be careful about the so-called Siddha Pranali. The Siddha Pranali process is followed by a class of men who are not very authorized and who have manufactured their own way of devotional service. They imagine that they are some associates of the Lord simply by thinking of themselves like that. Their external behavior is not at all according to the regulative principles. The so-called Siddha Pranali process is followed by the Prakrit Sahijiyas, a pseudo sect of a so-called Vaishnava. In the opinion of Rup Goswami, such activities are simply disturbance to the standard way of devotional service. Sri Rup Goswami says that learned Acharya recommended that we follow the regulative principle even after development of spontaneous love for Krishna. According to the regulative principles, there are 9 departmental activities as described above, and one should specifically engage himself in the type of devotional service for which he has a natural aptitude. For example, one person may have a particular interest in hearing, another may have a particular interest in chanting, another may have a particular interest in serving in the temple. So these or any of the other 6 different types of devotional service, that is remembering, serving, praying, engaging in some particular service, being in a friendly relationship or offering everything in one's possession, should be executed in full earnest. In this way, everyone should act according to his particular taste. Conjugal love. Devotional service following in the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan or the queens at Dwarka is called devotional service in conjugal love. This devotional service in conjugal love can be divided into two categories. One is indirect conjugal love, other is and the other is direct. In both of these categories, one has to follow the particular gopi who is engaged in such service in Golok Vrindavan. To be directly attached to the Supreme Personality of God in conjugal love is technically called Keli. This Keli performance means to directly join with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are other devotees who do not wish direct contact with the Supreme Person, but who relish the conjugal love affairs of the Lord with the gopis. Such devotees enjoy simply by hearing of the activities of the Lord with the gopis. This development of conjugal love can be possible only with those who are already engaged in following the regulative principle of devotional service, specifically in the worship of Radha and Krishna in the temple. Such devotees gradually develop a spontaneous love for the deity, and by hearing of the Lord's exchange of loving affairs with the gopis, they gradually become attracted to these pastimes. After this spontaneous attraction becomes highly developed, the devotee is placed in either of the above mentioned categories. This development of conjugal love for Krishna is not manifested in woman only. The material body has nothing to do with the spiritual loving affairs. A woman may develop an attitude for becoming a friend of Krishna, and similarly a man may develop the feature of becoming a gopi in Vrindavan. How a devotee in the form of a man can desire to become a gopi is stated in the Padma Purana as follows. In days gone by, there were many sages in Dandakaranya. Dandakaranya is the name of the forest where Lord Ramchandra lived after being banished by his father for 14 years. At that time, there were many advanced sages who were captivated by the beauty of Lord Ramchandra and who desired to become women in order to embrace the Lord. Later on, these sages appeared in Golok Vrindavan when Krishna invented him there, and they were born as gopis or girlfriends of Krishna. In this way, they attained the perfection of spiritual life. The story of the sages of Dandakaranya can explain as follows. When Lord Ramchandra was residing in Dandakaranya, the sages who were engaged in devotional service there became attracted by his beauty and immediately thought of the gopis at Vrindavan, who enjoyed conjugal loving affection with Krishna. In this instance, it is clear that the sages of Dandakaranya desired conjugal love in the manner of the gopis. Although they were well aware of the Supreme Lord as both Krishna and Lord Ramchandra, they knew that although Ramchandra was an ideal king and could not accept more than one wife, Lord Krishna, being the full-fledged personality of Godhead, could fulfill the desires of all of them in Vrindavan. These sages also concluded that the form of Lord Krishna is more attractive than that of Lord Ramchandra. And so they prayed to become gopis in their future life to be associated with Krishna. Lord Ramchandra remained silent, and his silence shows that he accepted the prayers of these sages. Thus, they were blessed by Lord Ramchandra to have association with Lord Krishna in their future lives. As a result of this benediction, they all took birth as women in the wombs of gopis at Gokula. And as they had desired in their previous life, they enjoyed the company of Lord Krishna, who was present at the time in Gokul Vrindavan. The perfection of their human form of life was thus achieved by their generating a transcendental sentiment to share conjugal love with Lord Krishna. Conjugal love is divided into two classifications, namely conjugal love as husband and wife, and conjugal love as lover and beloved. One who develops conjugal love for Krishna as a wife is promoted to Dwarka, where the devotee becomes the queen of the Lord. One who develops conjugal love for Krishna as a lover is promoted to Golok Vrindavan to associate with gopis and enjoy loving affairs with Krishna there. We should note carefully, however, that this conjugal love for Krishna, either as a gopi or as a queen, it is limited only to women. It is not limited only to women. Even when even men can develop such sentiments as was evidenced by the sages of Dankaranya. If someone simply desires conjugal love but does not follow in the footsteps of the gopis, he is promoted to association with the Lord at Dwarka. In the Mahakurma Purana, it is stated, great sages who were the sons of five gods rigidly followed the regulated principles in their desire to have conjugal love for Krishna. As such, in their next life, they were able to associate with the Lord. The origin of all creation, who is known as Vasudev or Krishna, and all of them got him as their husband. Parenthood or friendship. Devotees who are attracted to Krishna as parents or as friends should follow in the footsteps of Nand Maharaj or Subala respectively. Nand Maharaj is the foster father of Krishna, and out of all the friends of Krishna, Subala is the most intimate in Rajbhumi. In the development of becoming either the father or friend of the Lord, there are two varieties. One method is that one may try to become the father of the Lord directly, and the other is that one may follow Nand Maharaj and cherish the ideal of being Krishna's father. Out of these two, the attempt to directly become the father of Krishna is not recommended. Such a development can become polluted with Mayavad, impersonal philosophy. The Mayavadis or monists think that they themselves are Krishna, and if one thinks that he himself has become Nanda Maharaj, then his parental love will become contaminated with Mayavad philosophy. The Mayavad philosophical way of thinking is offensive, and no offender can enter into the kingdom of God to associate with Krishna. In the Skand Puran, there is a story of an old man residing in Hastinapur, capital of kingdom of Pandu, who desired Krishna as his beloved son. This old man was instructed by Nanda to follow in the footsteps of Nand Maharaj, and thus he achieved success. There is a statement in Narayana Views Sattva prayers that persons who are always engaged in thinking of the Lord as their husband, friend, father, or well-wisher are always worshipable by everyone. This spontaneous love for Krishna can be developed only by the special mercy of Krishna or his pure devotee. This process of devotional service is sometimes called Pushti Marga. Pushti means nourishing and Marga means path. Such development of sentiment nourishes devotional service to the highest standard. Thus it is called the path of nourishment or Pushti Marga. The Vallabhai Sampradaya, which belongs to the Vishnu Swami sect of Vaishnava religion, worship Krishna in this Pushti Marga. Generally, devotees in Gujarat worship Bala Krishna under this heading of Pushti Marga. Chapter 17. Ecstatic Love. By the process of executing regulated devotional service, one is actually elevated onto the transcendental stage, beyond the material modes of nature. At that time, one's heart becomes illuminated like the sun. The sun is far above the planetary system, and there is no possibility of its being covered by any kind of cloud. Similarly, when a devotee is purified like the sun from his pure heart, there is a diffusion of ecstatic love which is more glorious than the sunshine. Only at that time is the attachment to Krishna perfect. Spontaneously, the devotee becomes eager to serve the Lord in his ecstatic love. At this stage, the devotee is on the platform of Uttama Adhikari, perfect devotion. Such a devotee has no agitation from material affections and is interested only in the service of Radha and Krishna. clarify, in the previous chapter, the symptoms of devotional service were explained along with instruction as to how we may execute devotional service with our perfect senses and gradually rise to the platform as ecstatic ecstasy in spontaneous love. And the two kinds of devotional service, namely devotional service through regulative principles and through spontaneous love, were discussed. Within the stage of the regulative principle of the devotional service, there are two divisions, namely executive and effective. This effective portion of devotional service is called bhava or ecstasy. In this connection, there is a statement in Tantras that ecstasy is the first symptom of pure love for the personality of Godhead, and in that stage, one is sometimes found shedding tears of chivalry. Not always are these symptoms manifest, but occasionally. When King Amrish was put into difficulty by Durvasa, he began to think of the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus there were some changes in his body, and tears were falling from his eyes. These symptoms are actually activities of ecstasy. They are visible in the shivering of the body and the shedding of tears. After the outward appearance of these ecstatic symptoms, they stay within the mind, and continuation of the ecstasy is called samadhi. This stage of appreciation becomes the cause of future exchanges of loving affairs with Krishna. Elevation to this stage of ecstasy can be possible in two ways. One way is the constant association with pure devotees. The other way is by the special mercy of Krishna or by the mercy of a pure devotee of Krishna. Elevation to the ecstatic stage of life is generally attained through association with pure devotees, while elevation to the stage by the special mercy of Krishna or his devotee is very rare. The purport is that one should execute devotional service rigidly in the association of devotees so that there will be certainty in raising oneself to the static position. In special cases, of course, there is a special favor from Krishna, and although we should always expect that, we should not sit idly and simply wait for Krishna's special mercy. The regular duties must be performed. It is just as when sometimes it is found that a person who never attended school or college may be recognized as a great scholar, or an ordinary degree from great university may be offered to him. But this does not mean that one should avoid school and expect to automatically receive an ordinary degree from some university. Similarly, one should devoutly execute the regulative principle of devotional service and at the same time hope for Krishna's favor or for his devotees' favor. An example of rising to the stage of ecstatic love by executing the regulative principles of devotional service is given in the life story of Narada, which is described to Vyasdev in Srimad Bhagavatam. Narada tells that day of his previous life and how he developed to the stage of ecstatic love. He was engaged in the service of great devotees and used to hear their talks and songs. Because he had the opportunity to hear these pastimes and songs of Krishna from the mouths of pure devotees, he became very attractive within his heart. Because he had become so eager to hear these topics, he gradually developed within himself an ecstatic love for Krishna. This ecstatic love is prior to the pure love of Krishna, because in the next verse, Narada confirmed that by gradual process of hearing from the great sages, he developed love of Godhead. In that connection, Narada continues to say in the first canto, 5th chapter, verse 28 of the Bhagavatam, "First I passed my days in the association of the great sages during the rainy autumn season. Every morning and evening I heard them while they were singing and chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And thus my heart gradually became purified. As soon as I heard them with great attention, the influence of the modes of material ignorance and passion disappeared. And I am firmly fixed in devotion service to the Lord." These are practical examples of how one can develop to the state of ecstatic love simply by association of pure devotees. It is essential, therefore, that one constantly associate with pure devotees who are engaged morning and evening in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. In this way, one will get the chance to purify his heart and develop this ecstatic pure love for Krishna. This statement is also confirmed in the third canto, 25th chapter, 25th verse of Bhagavatam, where Lord Kapila
जी हुआ
says, "My dear mother,"
हरि हुआ
when a person is actually in association with pure devotees,
मैं जो मना लाया हूँ
the sublime
नहीं, वो
potency
नहीं
of
हुआ।
our devotional service can be experienced.
जी हुआ कागज से यहीं पे सब
कोई मीटिंग है कुछ तो कैसे हमारा शेयर उतना चाहते हैं
Bye.